surface level knowledge.
And it is called the social contract. The idea is that individual citizens are together in a great society, and that people kind of defer to this, that people behave and try to get along because ultimately they will derive the benefits of being in a society.
And Fred can also school you in many obscure points of fact.
A couple of years ago, the Jersey Devils won the Stanley Cup.
Comedy may be similar to science, and that just as science develops and evolves, so can comedy.
I think pets teach children how to love.
Quite a lot of information could be packed into an organism that we've yet to see. It's like the computer.
People have a really sincere interest in traveling out into space, but
Throughout Texas there are pumps that draw oil up out of the ground. But Texas has a more serious problem, and that is a diminishing aquifer. It rains in Texas, but it takes a long time for the rainwater to permeate down through the thick limestone layer. What we need are a means of collecting rainwater and then forcing it down deep into the ground before it all evaporates. These pumps that they used to pull oil up out of the ground, now they ought to push oil down deep into the ground to recharge the aquifers so that Texas will have water instead of letting it all evaporate before it permeates. Thank you. Yeah!
One day he came up and said, why don't we just make cars out of bubbles?
You talk to Fred and you just get the feeling that it's something about the pattern of his speech is very hypnotic.
And social capital is like money. It's like the capital that entrepreneurs use. Concepts like the Depression kind of related to human behavior and human intentions and beliefs. If people are depressed, if people believe that things are going to be bad, there is a kind of self-fulfilling momentum in that.
Like recently I was studying natural science and biology, and I learned that the man's penis goes into the woman's vagina.
Like in the early 1900s, the United States completed the Panama Canal Project, which enabled ships to sail from the Gulf of Mexico to the Pacific, really quickly.
He has got an incredible mind for trivia. I call it trivia because I don't see how sometimes day-to-day operations require some of the facts that he knows, but he can store that stuff in his mind and seems how to make these connections that just, it's sort of an incredible maze in his mind that he can make all these connections.
It would be like an enormous electromagnet, and it would enable, human beings to endure the acceleration, over a long period of time, but like after a few minutes, they could speed up.
Fred, this doesn't make any sense.
It's September 3rd, 2002. I'm in Austin, Texas, and I'd like to talk about a naval flight commander named Scott Spicer. He may be in Iraq, and here in Texas we've got to formulate some kind of strategy to save that American pilot in Iraq. And so what we've devised is a gift, something that will be brought to the city of Baghdad, and this may be a means of rescuing that downed pilot. Yeehaw!
But in terms of social skills, he's pretty much, he's kind of like a young teenager. He invades people's personal space, and he comes on very forcefully and doesn't know when to sort of back off. He likes to latch on to people, and when people meet him for the first time, they engage in conversation, and you can sometimes see when he's talking to somebody that doesn't know him, this gradual awareness that this guy's not going to stop talking. He's going to keep up until I, either just turn around and walk away from him or have to be rude. It's kind of interesting to watch him in action.
I don't know, sometimes people talk when they're nervous, and I think maybe sometimes when he's nervous he might talk more too. I
know it's like it's a combination of attention deficit disorder with on steroids or something. I think the guy's just he's happy. He's slightly immature, and it manifests itself in a lot of different ways. But
Fred is a very funny, unique individual who sometimes has problems socializing, I guess.
Well,
maybe that's it.
Well, I think that there's like a survey that's kind of biased. The thing is, I live most of my life in quiet solitude, and there are a few occasions when I go into the city, and on those occasions I would like to converse and talk to people.
Go into the city? What, do you live out in the country?
Yeah, I live in a place that does not have live theater, you know, most weekends. Like Austin is a thriving entertainment capital, and comparatively where I live, it's sleepy and not as cosmopolitan. So I come into Austin, I try to converse with people. I may at that time seem to be outgoing, but generally speaking, I'm somewhat quiet and introverted.
So there's a different side to Fred.
Fred's offstage personality is much more introspective. He actually knows intricate detail of a lot of technical things. I mean, he can go on for hours.
And you just feel like you're watching someone that's working up to something, and that the conversation is going to turn at some point, you know, because it's just a interesting rhythm. It's kind of like, I remember when I was a young man, and the first time I got pubic hair was when the movie Tron came out, and from then on I associated that the movie Tron was about someone trying to control my pubic hair with a computer. And did you know that you could make thousands of dollars just by placing small ads in newspapers across the country? I did it, and you can too.
And he means nobody any harm. He just likes to talk.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Adjacent or related to the social contract is another concept, and that is social capital. And that's the idea that there is some value or goodwill associated with the society wherein there is a social contract.
Almost any area of expertise.
And so in the modern times, instead of ships at sea, we have satellites in the sky. We have this new ocean to navigate, and it is the heavens above us.
It used to be the computer had to be as big as a building, and it could calculate, you know, like very slowly. Now there's like a lot of information crammed into it. Yeah.
And the answer may be electromagnetic acceleration, to build, you know, big rail guns that can accelerate enormous ships full of, you know, hundreds of astronauts. And
Winter events taking place in Lake Placid, New York?
Sure.
Wow, I'm really rambling.
Whenever I'm around and Fred is talking to somebody, Fred will introduce me to them by telling a little story about my name. My name is Trey Gallion, and Fred will automatically go into a story about my name, which is...
The Trey means three, and galleon is a Spanish sailing ship, and there were 3 Spanish sailing ships that came to the New World. What's going on here, this comedy, where we can say anything we'd like, is part of an American tradition. And Trey Gallion, his family is also from Puerto Rico, and that was a very important like refueling point on the way from the old world to the new world. I am provoked to think of an historical context when I think of Trey Gallion, that he's got that kind of calm, mellow voice that could unify a crew at sea on uncertain waters. That like he could just start talking to people, and they would feel better, and they could make the journey.
Was Tron an important film for you? I recall standing out in front of this club and asking you about your family.
And then they were here, and then you repeated it all verbatim from memory.
So there's a different side to Fred. Well, we don't know. The quiet, introspective, studying, researching.
Lately I've been studying a computer model. There's a game called Starship Orion. It's a big mathematical problem where there are planets and aliens and colonization. To try to think about it and manage it, I think requires some, you know, thinking and logic.
So you're trying to manage a universe. That's your problem. You're busy managing the entire universe, so it's kind of maybe hard just to relate to people one-on-one when the whole universe is in your hands. Well, that's the big picture.
Kim, who is this person next to you?
This is Fred.
And who is he to you?
He is my boyfriend. He's my man.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kim Robinson.
I've been thinking about being a stand-up comedian for a long time. A friend of mine told me about this comedy class. On my 44th birthday, I went and did stand-up comedy and took the class, and I was really high from being on stage. The adrenaline was pumping and I felt really good about my performance. So I went to the orthodontist and he was fixing to put them on. He goes, "Have you got any last questions?" I said, "Yes. What about oral sex?"
And he goes, I'm sorry, ma'am, it's cash or check only.
Fred was just so nice, and he opened the door. He introduced himself to me like he tends to do to people.
He's my man.
This is amazing. Normally women run in fear from Fred, and you run towards him.
That's because I'm an alcoholic and I've had a rough life, and so he seems sweet and fairly harmless to me.
What drew you to Fred?
He asked for my phone number and he called me.
Oh, another thing about Fred too. How's he pulling ass? He got a fucking woman. That's frightening.
What do you like about Fred?
His eyes and skills. He's got skills.
I don't know if I want to know what kind of skills Fred has.
Oh, and you had those giant billowing orange shorts, remember? Ooh, those could have revealed something.
He has skills. Let's just leave it at that.
Fred is built. Do you have anyone saying that on camera?
I have Kim hinting at it.
He is.
I have Fred bragging about it.
Do you brag about that?
No.
No.
But for the first 3 days that we went out, I finally, after the third day, I was like, so you're really like this. This isn't just a bit that you just keep on. But still, every now and then, I see a glimmer of that makes me think he's just playing me. I think it's just a facade.
When I went to public school, and there was sexual education, and they divided the class like into healthy, optimistic, viable people, and like obscure mutants. And like we all had to sit in an unventilated room and watch a documentary about an autopsy, and we got to hear like what was it, like Walter Cronkite, and there was like this old 16mm film, and they were forcing this camera through this body. And meanwhile, like all the happy, healthy kids were outside playing in the sunlight. It's been very...
What do you see in him that other people don't?
He's got layers. He's like an onion. He's got layers. There's more to Fred than meets the eye. There's more to Fred than you see on stage. He's the most articulate, kind, loving, sweet
Thank you.
man, and he's so supportive, and he says the most wonderful, romantic things.
Recently, I've been getting a lot of pussy. I don't mean that I have a lot of different girlfriends. I've just got one very special girlfriend, and she has a carnival-sized pussy.